Hello and welcome to Military Mantra. In this video, we'll be discussing about the criminal justice system in our country. So as you understand, most of our prisons are actually overcrowded, and also when it comes to delivery of justice, it usually takes a lot of time. So in order to make sure this delivery time is reduced and also the right person is actually convicted, we need to make sure our system is quite up to date. In order to make sure that happens, there have been a lot of recommendation and reforms that have been considered. So all those things will be discussed in this video. So first thing that you need to understand is in this criminal justice system, we have three important entities. The first one being the police system, the second one is court, and the third is basically prisons. All these three are actually interconnected and interrelated to each other. So how you can understand this is, say there are a lot of enforcing agencies in our country, say police system, CBI, NIA. So somewhere we need to understand all these agencies has to work with synergy to make sure all the crimes are eliminated from our society. And also when it comes to adjudicating of crimes or correcting the criminal code, this has to take up as we are actually solving a lot of cases and as we face a lot of issues in the current world. Because one thing we need to understand is our society is keep on changing and the nature of crimes that are coming up are quite advanced. Some are basically on the cyber front. So we need to make sure our police system is quite equipped, and also most of our laws are actually codified in one platform. So in order to make sure that these reforms can happen in our country, the country actually constituted a particular committee known as Malimath Committee. So this Malimath Committee is quite important, and you need to know the various suggestions that has been cited in this committee. So first thing is, this particular committee was actually instituted in 2000, and this is actually headed by Chief Justice of Kerala and Karnataka named Justice V.S. Malimath. So he was given the responsibility of finding out all those reforms that can happen so that we can actually bring them in the current system. So he actually recommended somewhere around 158 recommendation in 2003, but as you understand, most of the recommendation of any of the committee in our country are actually not adopted in most of the laws. So the same thing happened with this particular committee also. And what we need to understand is, right now our country is governed by three important, say, the legislations here. The first one is Indian Penal Code of 1860, and the second one is Code of Criminal Procedure, that is CRPC of 1973, and the third one is Indian Evidence Act of 1872. So these three basic laws actually constitute the Indian criminal law. Also, there have been a lot of legislation coming from parliament which actually deals with, say, you have the POSCO, and there are so many things. So all these actually governs about how you are going to enact on a particular crime that has happened in our country. So the question is, why exactly do we require to review the criminal justice system in our country? So the first thing that you need to understand here is, as we grow as a society, the nature of crimes are also growing. And right now you understand that there are a lot of cyber crimes that happens. Even the amount of terrorism that we find in our country is also because of various features and the technological enhancement that has happened over years. So we need to make sure our police system and even the judiciary is quite equipped with the technological enhancement that has happened. And the second thing is, because the number of crimes are increasing in our country, but the number of policemen in our say the services is quite less. So we need to make sure that the burden that they face right now has to be reduced in an optimum level. And the next thing is, there have been a lot of unnecessary and unjustifiable arrests which have been made in our country, which has been reported by the National Human Report Commission here. And something we need to understand here is that somewhere these unreported cases has to be reduced. And how can you actually reduce it? By actually empowering and boosting the transparency in the system. And the next thing is, there are a lot of pendency of cases within the judiciary of our country. So we need to make sure that these are actually reduced by actually filling all the vacancies in the judiciary. And the second thing is, most of the, say, cases that goes are low conviction. That means because sometimes you don't have the right amount of evidences here. Sometimes witness is not so much strong enough to come back in the court and tell the truth. So somewhere all these actually relates to the low conviction rate in our country. And that's the whole reason why most of the people are not reliable on the judiciary of our country. So we need to make sure all these things are fixed. And this can be fixed only when you evaluate the present system. That's the whole reason why we want the review of the criminal justice system. And the second thing you need to understand is, there is no codified of all the laws at one place. We have multiple laws wherein we know actually what to do, but there is not one single sheet where you have codified all the rules and regulation. So this is something which we need. Following which, there is a lack of coordination when it comes to the investigation and the prosecution. Because say the police goes for the investigation and they find a lot of say clues and all those things which are required to actually convict a particular say person. But the problem is judiciary takes a lot of time here. The amount of time that they take to give the judgment, all those prosecution that takes place, it takes a lot of time and it requires the right amount of evidences. So that coordination has to be fixed so that this justice delivery can be actually improved. Following with the next question is, there has been never a case wherein we are very much sensitive about the right of a victim, because usually everything in our criminal justice system is revolving around the particular accused person and not somewhere around the victim, because victim is a person who has actually has a collateral damage. It can be emotional level, it can be physical level. So we need to understand every criminal justice system should be revolving around the victims. So there are some important recommendations which has been given in the report, which we'll be studying in this particular slide. So the first thing is, there's something which you can actually borrow from a system known as the Inquisitorial System. So what is this Inquisitorial System? It is a system wherein the court is actually taking part actively in actually investigating a lot of facts about a particular case. And in India, we don't actually follow this particular system. We follow the adversarial system, wherein the judge is basically deciding as an impartial referee between the prosecution and the defense. So these are basically lawyers who are actually defending or basically who are against it. So here the judge acts only as a referee in our country. But somewhere we need to understand, in Germany and France, they follow the next system known as the Inquisitorial, wherein the judges are very much proactive. They are actually going into the field and actually finding all the facts so that the justice delivery is quite quick. So this is something which we can adopt partially in most of these, say, the lower judiciary, so that we can actually improve the rate at which we are actually delivering the justice. And the second thing is, the court powers to summon a person or say someone who's even not even listed as a witness can actually improve the amount of justice that we are giving right now in our courts. And the second thing is the right to silence. So this is under the Article 23rd third clause, which says that you can actually remain silent and cannot actually be a witness against your own. So this is something which can be modified so that, say, if you have admitted your say default that you have done, so somewhere the amount of time that has to be spent in the court can also be reduced. So this is something which has been recommended by Malimath Committee, but most of the people are not convinced with this recommendation. And the next thing is the right to be accused. That means, say you have been accused of particular crime, so you need to understand what are the various rights you have as an accused person. So the basically the police has to tell you what are the reasons why they're arresting you, also what kind of treatment that you are supposed to get when you are actually say accused. So all those information should be given to you, and most of the people in our country are not educated about the rights that they have. So we need to make sure all these are communicated in all the regional language so that the right of every accused is also protected here, because we believe that even if you are a criminal, you should be given an equal chance. So this is what our country actually believes in. And the next thing that we need to understand here is, most of the justice to the victims are not appropriate right now, because say most of the rape cases that happens, the compensation that is being provided, even if somebody is murdered, what will happen to the victim's family? All those things are always been say not being thought about by the judiciary in our country. So this is something the Malimath Committee is trying to bring in focus. And the second thing is, there has been a suggestion of bringing the victim compensation fund, which will get all its money from the assets which have been confiscated from the organized crime. That means, say you have done a bank fraud, so all the money that has been confiscated from your say the finances will be actually used to put in the victim compensation fund, which will be used in other cases. So all this recommendation is quite important when it comes to improving the victims, so that we are protecting them and giving them some amount of immunity. And the second thing is, right now the quality of investigation by the police is quite harsh, because we understand the police is not so much trained when it comes to investigation of the people. They somehow actually try to intimidate the particular witnesses here. So something we need to do so that this particular issue has to be resolved. And the next thing, and the most important thing in our judiciary, is right now we are facing a problem of limited number of judges and a lot of amount of files which has to be disclosed. And one thing we need to understand is, even though we bring in a lot of say judges, one thing is that we need experts who are actually able to solve these criminal cases that are in front of our judiciary. So one thing is getting all these experts who can actually solve this very much quickly and in the proper way. And the next thing is, there has been a recommendation to bring in National Judicial Commission, which will actually be constituted and which will reduce the Article 124, that is, gives the power of impeachment of judges, will be actually made a little easier, so that if any of the judges is say in the corruption practices, he can actually be impeached very easily. And the second thing is about the witness protection. says there are a lot of people who are being harassed here, and sometimes even if you are against somebody who is very powerful and he can actually intimidate you outside the court. So all these things happen in our country, so we need to make sure that the witness is rightly protected at any point of time. And the next thing is, the offenses against women are completely increasing in our country, so we need to make sure all those regulations or the laws, say Vishaka guidelines, the sexual harassment charges, has to be improved so that we can make sure that all the women in our country are protected. So in that case, there has been a recommendation, say for the 498 article, wherein the dowry harassment can be actually be bailable and compoundable. Because the bailable means if you get say convicted under this, you can be actually given a bail before say a certain time, and also it is compoundable. That means you can actually withdraw the complaint that you have filed. So the whole purpose of making this is because this particular say the act has been misused a lot many times. And the next thing is, it is the responsibility of the state to actually maintain all the things which are related to the crime of the state. But what we need to understand is, when it comes to the organized crime, say you are actually planning a burglary or basically a terrorism activity, so all these things should be dealt by the center because they are quite experts and they have a lot of resources also. So this has been recommended again and again that the center should play a major role in order to reduce the crime in our country. And also the most important recommendation is that the president should periodically actually review the criminal justice system in our country, so that we need to make sure that we are updated when it comes to the technological changes, the increase in crime, and the nature of crimes that we see in our society. So that's all for today, guys. I hope this video helped you a lot and you have understood about the criminal justice system in our country and what are the various recommendations by the Malimath Committee. So thank you and have a nice day. Jai Hind.